Hi guys, and welcome to the 8th edition of Talking Travel with me, Andrew. As you know, this is a weekly chat that goes live every Monday, and we discuss things of travel in Southern Africa and all things that are related to traveling in Africa. If you don't already follow us on Facebook, you can check out our page, www.facebook.com/wildisa, or you can follow myself on Twitter at AndrewBeckSA, as well as WildISA, and then you can also follow Gerry vanderwalt, who runs a photo chat on a weekly basis as well. This week, Gerry's had a look at histograms in Lightroom and photo processing, as well as some exciting product releases from Canon. This week in the blog, we did some posts on Botswana's green season. We looked at the highlights of the Savuti and the Linyanti region. We've been doing quite a bit on Botswana as the green season has kicked off, and there's some really good specials for South African or SADC residents traveling into that region, up to 30% off on the normal peak season rates. Then we've also gone and had a look at some of the Botswana, the frequently asked questions around Botswana, so Botswana FAQs, that's also on the blog, as well as some packing tips when traveling to Africa on safari. This is always a tricky one, especially when you're traveling to countries where you're going to be using light aircraft to get between your camps. There's a luggage restriction of sometimes 15, sometimes 20 kilograms, and it's often quite tricky to work out what you need and what you don't really need with you. So we had a look at some of those on the packing tips. That's all on the blog for this week. And then if you remember correctly, last week we had a look at the best places to see certain species. This question was raised by one of our viewers, Deb Weston from California, and she asked where are the best places to go and see specific animals. And it's a very interesting question. Last week's chat we covered, we looked at leopard and we looked at wild dogs as well. And what came through from the blog or from the polls on Facebook, that there was a very clear distinction. Some people preferred to go and view these animals in national parks, whilst others came or preferred to view them in private reserves. So that raised another question which we're going to look at the end of this chat. But for this week, we're going to focus on where are the best places to view cheetah and black rhino in South Africa. So, where are the best places to go and view cheetah? We've got some very interesting results on the Facebook poll. In terms of national parks, Kruger National Park and the Kalahari Transfrontier National Park were the places to go and see cheetah. And then on the private reserve side of things, we had Pinda in the KwaZulu-Natal region, Thorny Bush near the Kruger National Park, and then Tswalu Kalahari Reserve, also up near the Kalahari section between Namibia and Botswana. Let's have a look at the national parks first. Kruger National Park, down in the southern section around the Bergendal region, as well as the Crocodile Bridge Gate region, seem to be the best places to go and see cheetah in Kruger National Park. Then the other national park that we spoke about was the Kalahari Transfrontier Park. Now, I've just returned from a trip up there a couple of weeks ago, as did my partner Gerry vanderwalt, and this place is just amazing for cheetah sightings, especially the area north of Achterlurni in the Au riverbed, all the way up towards Mata. We saw 2 or 3 females with young cubs with them, as well as a number of lone males in that region. So it really did provide some of the best cheetah viewing in the entire park. We were unfortunate enough to have just missed a cheetah kill, which a female and her 3 cubs had made in the Au riverbed. And because this area is so open, it makes spotting these animals a lot easier than in some of the other national parks. Then on the private game reserve side of things, I know in Thorny Bush there's a female with a couple of young cubs at the moment, and because this is a private reserve, the guides are pretty clued up and know where these animals hang around. So that provides very good sightings in that region there as well. They also had a very interesting sighting earlier in the year where a young female came through with 2 cubs, one of which was suspected to be a king cheetah cub. So it was the first recorded incident of a king cheetah cub in the wild for a number of years. So very interesting. Just a little bit on cheetahs. They can move between these reserves quite easily, even though there are fences there. And more often than not, you'll find them alone, the females with their young cubs, or on the males, you might find them in a coalition of up to 4 individuals. When you do find them in those coalitions, those are more than likely young cubs which have grown up together and then formed a bond and then staked their claim around a territory. The survival rate for cheetah in the wild is very low, as low as 20%. 40% in some instances. And this is because of predation from other predators. So the pressure from other predators in these reserves really does keep cheetah down at low densities. So in general, in the wild, they occur at low densities, and that makes them very tricky to actually find sometimes in these national parks. And that's why I was blown away by the Kalahari Transfrontier Park, because there were just so many cheetah around, despite the number of lions in that area as well. So if you're heading into that area, definitely keep an eye open north of Achterlurni, between Achterlurni and the Mata Mata rest camp, in those riverbeds underneath the shade of the camel thorns. Excellent cheetah viewing in that part of the world. Then the other species that we're going to look at is the black rhino. Now these animals are generally shy and secretive, far more so than their relatives, the white rhino. White rhino, remember, out in open grasslands, they prefer to feed on the short grasses. Black rhino with a prehensile lip, they prefer to feed in more woody areas, feeding on the shrubs and scrub. So they, by nature, are more difficult to find than white rhino, and then they also occur in lower densities than white rhino. So the odds are really stacked up against you if you're trying to head out and try and find these guys. The best places to go and view them in the wild, on the national park side of things, in the poll we found that a lot of people suggested Shishlui and Folosi. There was also some suggestions around Kruger, and then also Pilansberg. Now in the Kruger area, apparently the region surrounding the Skukuza rest camp is very good, with a number of sightings there on a regular basis. So do keep your eye out if you're in that part of the world. Pilansberg, from time to time, you do get them around the Manqui Dam, which is right in the center of the reserve, and then also towards the northeastern sections on some of the quieter roads out there. You do get the black rhino coming down to drink at those water holes early hours of the morning if you can get out there. The other places in private reserves that black rhino sightings are really good is the Madikwe Game Reserve and Thornybush Game Reserve. Now we've mentioned Thornybush earlier on with the cheetah as well. Let's have a look at Madikwe first. There's a really good resident healthy population of black rhino in this reserve. The Inkwe Pan on the western side of the reserve, great place, great viewing of black rhino. And then also at some of the lodges towards the center of the reserve, they get some really good sightings of black rhino at their water holes in the early hours of the morning, late afternoon and into the evening. On the eastern side, Jackie's Game Reserve, Jackie's Lodges, they have fantastic black rhino sightings out there. We mentioned that on the Facebook page a couple of weeks ago as well. So Madikwe is really turning out some good black rhino sightings. Thornybush, also fantastic sightings. Funnily enough, the black rhino population there actually originated from Madikwe, and they have got, I'm not too sure of the total population now, but they've got some black rhino there that have really become quite relaxed and are providing some excellent game viewing opportunities. So those are two of the better places to go and view black rhino. Tswalu Kalahari Reserve also have a black rhino population, and this is a spectacular sighting if you can get it out there. Just the environment is so different compared to the other places in South Africa where you're going to see these animals, and they have a very good success rate at tracking down and finding their black rhino in the reserve. Fantastic game viewing, just very, very different surroundings. That's also a private game reserve. Right, that wraps up the best places to go and see species: cheetah, black rhino, wild dog, and leopard. Remember, we chose these species as they are some of the more charismatic species which are not often seen. Things like lions, elephants, white rhino, they're pretty easy to find in most national parks and private game reserves. So earlier on I mentioned that what came through in the polls, that there was a very clear distinction between national parks and private reserves. So this week's poll, we're going to start to look at some of the pros and cons between these two areas. So today already we've asked the question, what are the pros when you visit some of the private game reserves? And throughout the week we're going to ask some of the cons of these private reserves, and then pros of national parks and cons of national parks. So it's going to be very interesting. I have my own ideas around this, but I'm going to hold back on that. I just want to try and see what you guys feel about this. There's obviously cost implications and that sort of thing, but it would be, what we're going to do at the end of this for next week is put all the information together and then just run through, almost do a comparison between visiting national parks and private reserves. So often people are confused as to what they can expect and why would they be paying so much more at a private reserve compared to a national park. So that's going to be on the poll for next week. As always, drop us a line with some of your feedback, any questions or features that you might want to see on upcoming chats, and we'll see what we can do. Till next week. Cheers.